Um, my name's Jon Wright, and I own Taylor Farm in Londonderry, Vermont. This is a small working dairy farm, and we've been making cheese here for about 14 years. And to my right is Arthur Willey, who is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for quite a few years now. And Arthur did various things throughout his career. He was born in Rochester, Vermont. Roxbury, Vermont, I'm sorry. And moved down, took a job in Taunton, Massachusetts, and then ended up in South Londonderry working for Senator Edward Janeway. And so you've seen a lot of changes with farming in your career. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Roxbury, and what was your father's farm like?
It was small. The most cows he milked was 8, I guess, which nowadays would be nothing. But there was 4 or 5 small farms right around the area. And the thing that I remember quite a lot is they'd raise corn, and at the fall, one fellow had a blower, a silage blower, and they'd go around from one farm to another and fill the silos. And they would saw wood, fill the wood sheds, same, the idea. And that seemed to work out pretty good, except sometimes the fellow thought that he should be the first one to get filled instead of the last, but that's don't always works that way.
So you saw a little more cooperation.
Oh yeah.
Back then. It's interesting, a couple things you said, a small herd of 8 cows would be nothing today, but ironically there does seem to be a trend where farms are finding the large-scale production either isn't for them or it isn't as economically viable as they thought. So a lot of people are going back to smaller scale and often adding a niche product, as we have with the cheese. Were there people making butter and selling butter and cheese and things like that?
No, most of it was they'd separate the milk and make cream and ship that.
Mm-hmm.
And that went, I guess some milk was shipped. It would go by train to Boston or Somerville, down that way, near Boston. And I can't imagine the trouble we have with milk nowadays, how that ever got
all the way to Boston
to be used.
So tell us what year you were born.
1915. Yeah.
And so milk was hand milked from the cows?
Yeah.
And
everything was hand milked then.
And filtered and put into milk cans?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And stored in a spring basin to keep it cool?
Yes, my dad had a barrel for a water barrel for watering horses. The overflow of that went out into a small trough, and that's where he cooled the cream.
What would the inspectors say of that today?
They wouldn't like the looks of that.
So what happened with the skim milk? I know you didn't waste anything.
Either if he had pigs, he'd feed it to them, or throw it out on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the cream was that valuable that you could...
Well, that was the only thing that was saleable, I guess. They had no way of taking the milk at the time, every day, so...
And at that point, a large part of the farm work was done with horses or by hand?
It was all, I don't remember any tractors back then.
Yeah.
No, all horses.
And how would you describe that way of life? Did you love it? Was it...
I didn't know any difference, so I thought it was all right.
And everybody else, I mean, largely it was a farming community, so everybody around you was doing the same thing. Touch on, you used to be quite the sugar maker.
Yes, I used to.
And did you start that at Janeway Farm? You didn't do that down in Taunton?
Always did that at home.
Yeah.
My father had, well, to begin with, around 300 taps, and then he enlarged and sugared more.
Yeah.
I think he got 700 or 800.
Oh, wow.
And he had a, I don't know, it was, I guess it was a rig that they used to make sugarcane syrup. And the arch was a rocket, and it would rock from one year to another, so you never knew how it would land. And the pan was wider than the arch, so that it was 3-4 inches out beyond the arch. It was hard to, as I recall, the partition went crossways.
Huh.
And
But he made syrup with it.
yeah, for a while. Then he got another arch, just the framework, and he put it bricked up to it. And that pretty much stayed for a while. And then finally he got bigger and had to have a new evaporator, and had Bill's father build a new sugar house for him. And
Is that sugar house still standing, or
no? It's gone down.
What year did your father pass away?
I don't know. I can't say.
How old was he?
Up in his 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did he farm right up to the end, or?
Tried to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any other family members that kept the farm going with him, or?
Just my mother.
Yeah.
Well, of course, my sister didn't live off too far away, half a mile or so away. And Bill lives, well, where I took you, that's where my grandmother used to live. And so it, yeah. My father bought that farm when he got married, $1,200. Took him 20 years to pay for it, he said.
And how many acres was that?
Oh gosh, not too many.
Yeah.
But we had a wood lot way up on the mountain and went with it. But he cut a lot of wood. And
What do you suppose that land is worth today?
I don't know, not too much.
More than $1,200.
Well, maybe. At the homestead where I grew up, it was sold. Bill had the whole thing. My brother and I signed off and let my sister have the whole thing, so Bill got it, I heard that. And so he sold the house and barn area. The rest of it he kept, fields and so on, and they never got anything done to them, only hay, you know.
Yeah.
But when I got of age, I wanted my dad to enlarge the herd a little, and he said no. So I had to find some other place to go. So I went to Barry, Mass, and they were milking 24 cows there. Had a milk route in town, and that was part of the job. I had to deliver the milk. I'd go in the morning and milk, go out and deliver the milk, come back and bottle the milk for the next day and milk again, go to bed.
Get up and do it again. What time did you get up in the morning?
Oh, around 5, quarter 5, something like that, yeah. We had a milking machine there, finally. It was run by a gas motor that had a water jacket on it to cool it. And the fellow that was there ahead of me was not too good at running the milker. And the owner thought he had to strip the cows after the milking machine. And so...
And by stripping the cows, you mean he had to hand milk
hand milk.
residual milk?
Well, it's surprising how much he would get sometimes, even after others hand milked. And so one day the other fellow moved to town and he would be there late in the morning, so one day I said, I guess I'll do the milking. And after that, the boss came out and he was going to strip the cows, and he stripped 3 or 4 and he didn't have a pint of milk. So he just
So you got promoted to milker.
Threw the pail away and didn't do that anymore. One day the machine wouldn't start, the motor wouldn't start. We milked by hand for almost 2 weeks. And I had read different things. And I read somewhere that the head of the I'm trying to say. The head in there might have a small crack. It wouldn't even show. And you could cover it with varnish or shellac, you know. And so I went to the house and asked if they had any. No. So I found little and did it. And after it dried, I started up the motor and run all right.
Worked fine.
Well, now everybody came to the barn in a hurry.
So that must have seemed like a pretty modern operation after your father's farm.
It was. He didn't have electricity, but they had gas lights, which was something I had never seen.
In the barn?
In the house.
In the house, yeah.
It would. He had a tank out there, and he put some kind of powder in it and make gas, and that's the lights. If you could believe it, you could see with it, but some days it wouldn't hardly see.
Wasn't all that right.
Then he'd have to put some more powder in.
So there you could hand deliver milk. You weren't separating cream; you were selling whole milk, and you deliver every day.
Milk and I bottle cream. We got a neighbor up by the road ways, had a small herd, and he made some cream. So we got cream from him, and we didn't have milk enough to do it all. My biggest fault was, I guess, I wanted to enlarge things all the time. So I would keep trying to find more customers. And then, of course, you had to have more cows and so on. Well, I had to stay there during the war. After the war was over, I wasn't getting very much money there, and I got married and had one child. So I wanted more money, and so I went to Taunton down there for a job that was bigger, a little bigger. Although they didn't milk too many at the time, and they were putting up 14 cases, 12 quarts per case of milk for 2 days when I went there. And when I left, I was putting out 900 quarts a day.
Wow.
I didn't know enough to take it easy.
So what year did you start in Taunton?
I don't remember. I was in Barrie 4 or 5 years, and then I went down that.
So maybe 1950 or so?
No, it wasn't that late. But I came to the Londonderry last day of '54, and I'd down in Taunton something like 7 years ago.
Oh yeah. Huh. And down there, was a lot of the work still being done with horses, or they
No, they
by
had
that
tractor down there.
all tractor power?
Little Ford tractors.
Yeah.
35 horse, and I thought we had something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had to plow they had a long lane out to the road, and I had to plow that with that little tractor. It had a blade a little wider than the front wheels, and the only way I could go we used to get some good storms down there. The only way I could do it was wide open, and once in a while a front wheel would jump over a snowbank, and then I'd have to stop and dig it out. But nobody else seemed to want to do it. I always got these jobs that nobody else
wanted to do, and you did well with them.
They had 40 cows milking them.
Wow.
And I got the job of milking them. We had one milking machine that would run off a tractor. manifold or something there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I wasn't exactly strong, but I would just about get through to start in again.
Yeah. Oh, oh, that's discouraging.
Then they had the prize Guernsey cow there for a while to show. And
This was in Taunton?
had to take her pictures one day out there, and so they didn't milk her in the morning. After they took pictures, somebody got a milker. I milked her by hand. Filled a 20-quart can and then didn't hold it all. Wow. This cow didn't like to be milked by a machine.
And then what year did you come up to South Londonderry? How did that all transpire?
Well, they sold milk route down there, and I stayed on the farm a little, and then I decided I wanted something different. And I went looking for a job, and he found out that I did, so he gave me a 30-day notice. So I came up to Roxbury for a little vacation and found this job here. And went back and told him I was done. Moved right out the last day of December. I came up here and we had about a foot of snow at that time, the last day of December. And I remember because I had an antenna I brought with me from my TV. Stuck it up in the snow out on the front lawn and it worked perfect. Later I put it on a pipe on the back side of the house and it didn't work.
Never worked as well. Huh. Now tell me a little bit about Ed Janeway and the Janeway family.
Well, he was in the legislature, and of course I moved up last day of December, so he had to start right in the legislature again, so he didn't have time to hang around with me any. And I heard afterwards, he said the only thing he worried about me was I was so young for being a manager. He had hired a fellow for manager the year before. He thought for the fellow's life, he said. 9 months later, the guy quit and went back to Massachusetts, so I got the job. And I never heard anything more about age or what I ought to do.
Now I heard when I was young, growing up in the area, I heard reputation that you could be quite a stern farm manager. Hard to work for.
I imagine I might have been at times. I had one fellow that used to drink pretty well. I didn't know it when we hired him. And the stable was divided. There was one L part that had a dozen cows out there, and overhead was all open, and the bullpen out beyond there. And he'd go out there to feed the bulls, and he'd apparently drink a bottle of beer and toss the bottle up over the top. One day I saw the bottles up there, and I approached him about it, and he didn't know anything about it. I said, well, let me show you. We got part way and he didn't want to go show me. So before night they were gone.
And was he gone?
No.
He stayed on.
He stayed on. We were haying over in Landgrove one day and he was coming over later and he was sick on the way over. Yeah. He didn't have to go home to breakfast. He'd just take the drink and he'd go out right around somewhere. He got done. He got a job over in Pollitt on another farm, and the farmer let him take the truck to move. He had an accident getting there.
No.
So he didn't have that job.
But,
But,
employees can be frustrated, no?
well, of course, I didn't get the best of help. I had to get some young fellows or somebody that couldn't get a job anywhere else. I probably was pretty stern with them. I was with the animals too.
Yeah.
I never had trained any animals to show before that, but I did there.
Now, just a side note, they had mostly Guernseys
It's not, they had
yeah.
Guernseys, yeah.
and that a lot of farms around
Oh, yeah.
in the
Yeah, there
50s
was.
milked
There was a
Guernseys.
lot of Guernseys around then. And they would have a sale, a big sale every year, the week after the Rutland Fair at the fairgrounds up there. And the fellows would come around to get animals to put in the sale, and they would try to get the farmers to put in some good animals, you know. And this sale was, you wouldn't believe the prices they pay for some of them. You bid on mine, I'll bid on yours. And they get good prices for animals. But, well, I did a lot of work on my animals that I put in. I would wash them and brush them and clip them and everything, you know, train them to show. So we most always got pretty near top price. The price, I guess it was, I topped the sale with
Wow.
what I put in.
A lot of time and energy to
Mm-hmm.
do all that, on top of haying, and
Yeah.
you were in charge of everything at the farm.
Oh, yeah.
How many employees did you have there?
Well, two. Tried to have two. Sometimes I only had one. When I had one, like what's, as you know, every day then.
Yeah.
But if I had two besides me, I set it up that one fellow could have a weekend off every third week.
Mhm.
And, you know, 2 days off. So
Mhm.
it worked out. Only I didn't always get them.
That's the privilege of being the boss.
Yeah, if anything happened, you had to be there. And
That hasn't changed.
no.
And you were milking about 30 at that point, or?
Yeah, something like that. And I ended up milking 65. And well, I don't know how many they had altogether then, but I ended up with about 110 head on the place there, counting all the heifers and everything.
I know the Janeway Farm always had the nicest equipment, and it was the best looking farm around here, best run farm around here.
That I didn't have much to do about it. It was there for me. He was never satisfied unless he did have the best, I guess. And this fellow came around to the idea of hay dryer, blow a heat dryer, hay dryer. And there was very few of them around. There was one down in Massachusetts somewhere, and there was one further north in the Vermont. So we put in one. We put in, it was a big furnace-like thing and on wheels, and put it right in one side of my garage to blow out into the shed, and we put in slatted floor and pile of hay off onto that. It went out and up over the air chamber, and when the bales were dry, they would be all shapes. It dried them except for the top bales. Water would come up and they'd be wet on top.
Huh.
So then they decided that it was best to go to the wagon dryer, blow down through.
Hmm.
So one winter I had to make up those 3 wagons. And they put in these canvases overhead to come down, close in around the sides. So we could put in up to the top of the racks, and then put it in there, and I'd start up the blower and run all night, 7 gallon an hour.
And that was when oil was 15 cents a gallon?
I have no idea what it was. I wouldn't pay the bill.
Couldn't do it today, though.
But it made hay. You couldn't believe it.
It's beautiful.
It was just as green when you took it out as it was when you put it in there.
Yeah.
And it was dry. But it all had to be piled on the wagon so that the cut side was down so that it could go out. And the wagons had a framework down 8 inches or so that time the heat got down, moisture got down, it was away from the hay, you see. That would all kind of different, but it was beautiful stuff, and boy, the cows did like that. But you couldn't afford to do it nowadays.
Yeah. Would you call it a good life? Were you?
Oh, I thought so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It wasn't making too much money, but it was a good life. I heard one story about Quentin over there. He used to have problems some with the milk inspector. And one day the inspector was there, and Quentin's mother come out and wanted some milk, and she took the can, dipped right into the tank, went out.
We all did that, didn't
The
we?
inspector didn't think that was quite right.
We all did it. We just didn't do it with the inspector there.
Inspectors and I didn't always agree on everything because they would come around and they'd always find fault with something. And they'd go to some other farm and they'd pass things that they'd find fault with me.
Right.
And I found out things like that, you know, and it didn't sound good. So one day we had a new inspector. He was one of two brothers that run a farm over in Walpole.
The hills, right?
Right next.
John Hill.
Pinnacleville.
Yeah.
He came in and he looked things over and he wrote, "Excellent," right down across that sheet, you know. Never again. I guess they told him, "You don't write excellent."
Find some fault with him.
But he was all right. He was pretty good.
What are some of the as you look back over the years, what are some of the most amazing innovations or improvements, if you want to call them improvements, that you've seen? I think you grew up in a time when a lead pencil and a pad of paper was something special, and now you use a computer and...
Well, yeah, one of the things we did put in was the hay elevator to run the bales straight up, and then they'd go full length of the barn. You could shove them off anywhere you wanted to, which was all right, but you didn't want to be underneath.
As you were one time.
Well, I got hurt up the other house there. It was a small fall too, but it hit me right on the back of the head.
Yeah.
And yeah, that shouldn't have happened, but it did. I wore a brace around my neck for 10 years after that. Chiropractor, sometimes 3 days a week, and after a while he said, "Well, you shouldn't be wearing a neck brace, but in your case, I guess you'll have to."
Well, farming's a dangerous occupation.
Mm-hmm.
But you, other than that, you were relatively healthy, and
Yes, I was always very lucky.
then so you went from Guernseys to Holsteins. Was that in the early '60s, or?
I don't remember just where it was. He bought 6, I think it was, Holstein heifers from Canada, big ones, big animals. They were 3 years old when they calved first, so they were big, and they milked good. One of them tested 5%, and I never could get her bred again. It's the others didn't. They didn't test like that.
But they made a lot more milk than the Guernseys.
Oh yes, they made a lot more milk. Oh sure, we had several of them that would go over 100 pounds a day, you know. That takes a lot of feed.
Yeah.
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 And it cuts down on the life of the animal too, I think.
Yeah. What was the Other than the hay elevator, what was another great invention on the farm that you enjoyed? Made your life better? Probably all made your life better, huh?
Well, of course, the manure pump, that when we put that in underground to the manure shed out back, it would come up out of the pipe back maybe, well, it was back more than halfway from the front doorway, and it would build all the way back to the back wall, then it would build up, and then it would come
Move forward.
And I can't smell, never could smell anything, but I admit that when you started taking that out, something was a
right.
little strong.
But that was
But
good
It
manure.
would make grass grow.
Yeah,
I never bought any more fertilizer after we put that in.
yeah, yeah.
Take that out and spread it, and the grass would just grow.
You had good luck with that pump, but I know some people didn't have such good luck with it.
No. First, we put in an auger type gutter cleaner. That was before we built on the addition to the barn. That was augers all the way. About, I guess they were 8-inch augers.
They were right behind the cows,
Yeah, in the gutter.
and they didn't. No feet ever got caught in them. Or,
Great, of course.
oh yeah.
And then they go across the end and up out into the manure shed to load in on spreader. There was a lot of rats around there, and they went in one morning, and there they run right into that elevator, you know.
And you turn it on.
I never did see what happened on the other end, but
There were less rats anyway.
you got so there was less rats. I had a big piece of millet up in the field above the barn up across from my house, and I chopped every day to feed the cows. And when it got down to a real small place, that was loaded with rats.
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it.
They like that millet. Huh.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes, all right enough.
So going from horses to tractors was obviously a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Putting in a bulk tank
Yeah,
was a big change. Had to increase the quality of the milk significantly.
we were one of the first ones that put in a bulk tank, and had to draw it off into cans for quite a while because they didn't have any tank trucks to draw it. Had to just
Huh, so you'd milk into a bulk tank and then put it back into cans.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
They had to get enough farmers with bulk tanks to
yeah.
afford the truck.
And so one day the inspector come around and he, how long are you going to do that? And I said, not long. He said, I thought probably.
Huh.
One thing was, a change was when they put in loose housing, where they tied up the cows. Well, that worked all right in some places, but lots of places they wouldn't clean,
All right.
and they didn't have room enough to clean. There was one place, well, almost across the road from Quentin Tremblay's driveway.
Yeah.
Go up in there.
Up the hill there.
They put in a milking parlor and
Freestall.
freestall. I went over there. Couldn't believe it. That was all board where the cows were. All lumber. And they had to come over and go through the parlor and back. They had a rope there to protect, to divide them. Some of the cows didn't see the rope.
Mm.
You've got to have things better than that. And I don't think they did that too long. but it was right on a side hill. And
Yeah, I remember that.
the milk room was down below, so the milk just run right down from the parlor down into the milk room.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you do for entertainment?
I belonged to the Grange,
Mhm.
and that was about it.
What would the Grange meet once a month or so? Or
Twice, I think.
Twice
it
a
was.
month, yeah.
Twice a month, I believe.
you were head of the Grange for a while, right?
I was master for 20 years. Then I got out of that. I got somebody else in. Well, they put in Bert Howe, which was an old man, and halfway through the year he played out, so I had to be master again.
Again. You couldn't shake it.
Then we got others, and when Gary came along,
All right, yeah.
put him in as master. Some of them thought that I wouldn't like that at all, but I did. After he'd been in a few years, he wanted me to go back in. I said, no.
Yeah.
His mother said, well, if we put you in as master, you have to be, won't you? I said, no, I can get out of the Grange.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but I used to go down to Barry Master, my brother, weekends.
You're right, I remember that, yeah.
We'd go to a card party down there.
Yeah.
They'd play cribbage. They'd have, I don't know, 6 or 8 tables round, four people.
Wow.
Table, and play partners, and usually the ones that lost would get up and move to the next table.
Yeah,
And they'd change partners too.
sure.
But once in a while they'd have the winners move. So you never knew who you were going to play with or
Yeah.
anything like that. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
One night we were picking up the cards, and then went and got the box. There's the 8 of diamonds in there. Everybody had the same chance.
Never missed it. That's funny.
Used to have some great times down there, though. And then they'd have a little refreshment afterwards.
We had a great square dance here on Memorial Day. Did you hear about that?
No?
We had, terrible, we do a lot of events here at the farm, and it was terrible, rainy, cold, raw day, and
Yeah.
I thought nobody was going to show up for this thing, and we had probably 150 people came for this dance. And did you ever do dances that go to, Ken Walker used to do dances, right? And
No.
the Richardson barn.
Yeah, I know they used to have dances there. No, I never went.
You never had the time for it.
No, I never went over there.
Huh.
I never danced for some reason.
Never played music.
No. I tried. Had an accordion. I tried to learn how to play it.
That would have been great.
I just didn't have the music ear.
Remember one of the best sleigh rides we had? You came out and Will Goodwin
I do.
jumped on the sleigh and played accordion for us on the ride.
I can remember him coming across the road with that accordion, and he got over the fence and he sunk right in. There's no way up to his waist. He holding the accordion up, trying to get out of the snow. We were waiting for him over there. Then he played all the way up through and back.
And it was pretty cold to be playing the accordion, but
Yeah.
he did it.
Well, I took one vacation while I was working there, 30 years I think it was.
Was it a paid vacation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I got paid by the month.
Yeah.
Twice a month I'd get a check. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, you get paid vacation. We went to Maine, my wife and I. And Kurt was going to school up in Burlington, and he came home in the summertime. And he said, I didn't do the milking, he said. But he said, I had to mow at night to get things done.
Yeah. Never ending.
You see that things was,
He had no appreciation for what you did.
it was different.
Yeah. Now he didn't have the same interest in the farm.
Not really.
He didn't want to take it over.
No. He was the best help I had, I think, while he was there.
Yeah.
But no, he didn't want to farm. I don't know if he had any idea that he would do what he did for the lifetime, but
Yeah. But he did well for himself.
oh yeah.
Better than farming, probably.
Even yeah, oh yeah.
Did you always grow a garden and have your own
I had
vegetables?
big garden across
Yeah.
the road from my house.
Yeah.
I would have 2 rows of peas there, and the field up there was full of deer all the time. Never bothered that garden. Until one year, I had 2 rows of peas, and I didn't get back as many as I planted. When the peas were gone, they ate the rest of it.
No.
So that was the end of the garden over there.
Huh. Well, we've got some great haying weather, so I think I've got to get back out and
I see you have some on the ground.
we got some on the ground. It's easy to put it on the ground.
Have you got any in yet?
Nope, this is our first mowing. It's either been too cold or too wet. Last weekend we had snow on the ground.
Yeah.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
What do you think about the weather? You've seen more history of weather and been with farming, been so involved with it.
Well, it's definitely changed.
What, isn't that a little unusual to have snow on Memorial Day?
We've had it once before, I think.
Once, so in your
My
lifespan.
legs are out in good shape and that snow. Since
Yeah.
I've been here, I think.
And now it's 90 degrees out.
Of course, it's different now than it was. I used to walk down to the barn and I couldn't see over the snowbank.
Yes.
Now, they go so fast they throw the snow out that 20 feet, so there's no
Right.
snowbanks
Right.
most of the way.
Right. But there is also less snow.
Yeah, less snow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. 1 year here, oh, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago maybe. It was, my snow blower would hardly blow it over the top of the snow banks. I
Right.
had no path there
Yeah.
up to the house.
I wish I kept better track of it. We had a year here when we had to rent a bulldozer to open up our sleigh trails for the horses. And after we opened up the trail, you just see the horse's head and the driver
Well, yeah, yeah.
going around the field. But I mean, I don't remember the intensity of heat that we have now during the summer and the dry periods and then the wet periods.
I know, we used to have some hot days.
But we'd get hot days in August, that was,
We'd get some in June too. Of course, we never started hay until, July 4th, I guess it was. Start haying.
yeah. You do one cut,
Yeah. Well,
get it all.
maybe get a little second cut,
Yeah.
but not much.
Did you know Leonard Cobb, who lived on Spring Hill Road over in South Derry?
No.
Leonard was a great uncle of Pete and Danny, I guess. And he was kind of eccentric.
Oh.
And he used to hay by the light of the moon to avoid the heat,
Yeah.
haying with horses. And
Uh-huh.
have you seen some of these farms today that are milking 500 cows? And
I haven't. I don't know if I want to.
yeah, could you imagine that farming would ever get to that point?
No, I couldn't. And I still don't understand how they handle them.
Yeah. Well, not always very well.
Some of the stories I've heard that they must have an awful turnover of animals.
And employees.
Probably, yeah.
My understanding is the average cow in the United States lives 4 years now. they can milk 2 lactations and then they're gone.
Well, yeah.
But
I was lucky if I could get them 3 or 4 lactations, you know, but we were pushing them for all they were worth.
yeah.
And
Well, that's another thing that amazes me. The number of creameries that used to be around here. Seward's up in Wallingford. You must have shipped milk to Seward's at one time.
I didn't, but I don't know.
And then Idle Knot over in Springfield.
Well, I suppose there used to be a creamery down here this side of Johnny Wiley's.
Right. Right.
Well, they had no way of keeping it to go anywhere, you know, so
Right.
they'd have a creamery.
Yeah.
Make butter.
Yeah. Yeah, every town had one.
I was reading a book that said back in, I think it was 32, something like that, a fellow was getting 6 cents a quart, 6 cents a gallon for his milk.
Now we get $6 a gallon. Or better.
And he's no better off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I should say that's what we get on the farm for selling raw milk, but yeah, the price of fluid milk is proportionally never gone up.
It don't make sense. Feed, I guess you could say tripled in cost.
Yeah, yeah. Labor.
We thought when it went up to $80 a ton, it really had gone up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the price of milk didn't go up.
Correspondingly. So it always intrigues me that it seems like everything comes full circle. What I experience running the farm here is that we got to a point of milking 65, 70 cows, and that had its struggles and frustrations, and we now are milking 25 or 30, and we also grow a big garden and produce a lot of our own meat, and try to be somewhat more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And just seems like that's the way of the world.
Well, yes, I think so. I don't understand how those big farms can actually make money.
Well, I think it's very questionable whether they really do. Awful lot of work goes into making milk. And there are fewer and fewer farms. There are about 900 farms left, dairy farms left in Vermont now.
Some years back, one fellow, I think it was, had 3 big farms in Vermont. Some up north and some down south.
Yeah.
I guess they're all around.
What other thoughts? Any? You think there'll be a revival of farming in Vermont, or do you think it's?
Oh, I don't see how, because they can ship milk in from the west now, and everything is. I don't understand how cheesemakers can still live in Vermont. There's so many of them making it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's certainly become more challenging, but in a way it has generated a lot of interest in the state of Vermont because there are so many cheesemakers here.
Oh, yes, it is.
We get a lot of visitors here to the farm specifically because of the fact that we're cheesemakers. And
Speaking of visitors, that was one thing that I used to have down to Janeway's a lot. About the time that I got going there in good shape, there was 3 or 4 families moved in from Connecticut around the area, and they just loved to come and visit.
and help.
Yeah, and help. And some of them wanted to see a calf born. Well, I had a cow expecting, and January 1st, New Year's Eve, long in the middle of the night, that cow decided to have calf, so I called them all right up, and I had folks lying right around the pen there watching that.
Were they sober?
Oh, yeah. 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 Something different.
Yeah, we have the same thing. People.
Yeah, I have to laugh up here though to see some of the folks. They come to the door and the children.
Yes. Yeah.
And others will walk right down through and think nothing of
Doesn't
it.
faze them. Yeah.
I think it ought to have some farms. It needs some. And folks ought to be able to see what a job it is to
Produce food.
produce food. Yeah.
Yeah, have an appreciation for it. Well, I personally think that there will always be a place for farms here. I think transportation costs are going to
That's possible.
become
Yeah.
exorbitant, and I think small local communities will rely more and more on the farms. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk. We should do this more often.
If you shut that off, we could talk more.
Donner wants to be center stage.